In a small, dimly lit room at the Vatican, the faint glow of a single candle cast shadows across the pale face of Pope Francis. His breaths were shallow, each one a fragile thread tethering him to life. His aides stood in silence, their eyes glistening with unshed tears, afraid to disturb the sacred stillness. But in that fleeting moment, with the last of his strength, the Pope gestured for a piece of paper. His trembling hand scrawled a note no one could have foreseen. It wasn't a directive for the cardinals or a testament for the church, it was an astonishing request: take amigo, my friend, to a boy in Spain. His name is Lucas, 5 years old, living in a small village. Don't ask why, just do it. Amigo. The name sent a ripple of shock through the aides. Few knew the Pope had a dog. Amigo was never seen in public, absent from every Vatican photograph. He was a closely guarded secret, confined to the Pope's private garden, where, years ago as Jorge Mario Bergoglio in Buenos Aires, he had rescued a scruffy puppy from a street corner. From that moment, Amigo became his quiet companion, lying at his feet as he wrote sermons, listening to murmured thoughts in the stillness of night. To Francis, Amigo was more than a pet, he was a living symbol of the unconditional love he preached. But Holy Father, why a boy? Why Lucas, a young aide? Father Paolo asked, his voice quivering. The Pope managed a faint smile, his eyes flickering with a final spark. Because that boy understands silence. Amigo needs a heart that listens, not mine anymore, but one that will carry on the mission. He paused, his breath faltering. Tell the boy you was chosen. Father Paolo bowed, clutching the sealed envelope just handed to him. Inside was a handwritten address and a brief letter, sealed with the Vatican's crest. No one dared press further. But in Father Paolo's heart, a question swelled: who was Lucas? A 5-year-old boy, with no fame, no power, no ties to the Vatican, why was he chosen to receive the final gift of the leader of the Catholic Church? Thousands of miles away, in a small village in Andalusia, Spain, Lucas sat on the steps of his home, his small feet swinging idly. The boy had large, dark eyes that seemed to hold secrets, but he rarely spoke. Since his grandmother's death 2 years ago, Lucas had grown silent, retreating into a world only he could see. He didn't cry or lash out, he simply withdrew. His mother, Sophia, a seamstress, tried everything to draw him out, but each attempt was met with a faint smile and a turn of his head. Their home was modest, its whitewashed walls stained by time, its red-tiled roof faded under the Andalusian sun. A rusty, tireless bicycle leaned against a wooden fence. Sophia often watched her son and wondered, what's going on in that head of yours? What stole your voice? But today, Lucas seemed different. He held a piece of chalk, sketching strange circles on the ground, muttering softly. Sophia, stitching a shirt in the kitchen, caught his words: someone's coming. A soft friend. Sophia froze, her heart pounding. Lucas, what did you say? The boy looked up, his eyes unusually bright. Mama, I dreamed of an old man in white. He said I wouldn't be alone anymore. Sophia shivered. Lucas had never spoken of dreams, let alone mentioned any old man. She tried to dismiss the unease, attributing it to a child's imagination. But deep down, a strange premonition took hold. 3 days later, a white van rolled to a stop in front of Lucas's house. The villagers, accustomed to the quiet rhythm of rural life, gathered and whispered curiously. Father Paolo stepped out, his black cassock fluttering in the breeze, holding a leash. Beside him was Amigo, a brown and golden dog with gentle yet piercing eyes, as if taking in every detail. Lucas, sitting in the yard, stood immediately. He didn't run or shout, he simply walked forward, clutching an old blanket. Sophia rushed out, alarmed. Father, what's this about? We don't know anyone from far away. Father Paolo smiled warmly, raising a hand to calm her. Sophia, I come from the Vatican. This is the wish of Pope Francis. He opened the envelope and read aloud, Lucas, you are chosen to care for Amigo, the friend who walked with me. You understand silence, and Amigo will understand you. Let love continue, as I have done. Francis. Sophia covered her mouth, tears spilling over. She couldn't comprehend why the Pope knew of her son, an unknown boy from a remote village. But when she looked down, the sight before her stole her breath. Lucas had knelt, spreading the blanket on the ground. Amigo, without command, stepped forward, lay down on it, and rested his head in the boy's hands. No greetings, no barking, just a profound connection, as if two souls had known each other for lifetimes. "You knew you were coming," Lucas whispered, his voice clear for the first time in 2 years. Sophia collapsed, embracing her son. Father Paolo, though he'd witnessed many wonders, felt his throat tighten. He handed the leash and letter to Sophia, then quietly left, unwilling to disrupt the moment. Word of the Pope's dog being sent to a boy in Andalusia spread like wildfire. Villagers gathered outside Lucas's home, curious yet reverent. Some whispered of miracles. Others, like old Juan the baker, scoffed, "It's just a dog." The Pope must have been mistaken. But Sophia ignored the chatter. What stunned her was Lucas's transformation. The boy, once silent as a shadow, now murmured to Amigo, sharing disjointed stories about the man in white or a place full of light. One afternoon, Lucas led Amigo to the field behind their house. He sat down, looked at the dog, and said, "You know what he wants, don't you?" He said, "We have to keep going." Sophia, watching from a distance, overheard. She didn't understand what keep going meant, but Lucas's tone carried an odd certainty, unlike any 5-year-old. That night, Sophia reread the Pope's letter. The brief words sank into her heart, "Let love continue." She looked at Lucas sleeping soundly beside Amigo, the dog curled at his feet. A question swelled within her, why Lucas? And what was this mission the Pope spoke of? Meanwhile, at the Vatican, Father Paolo reported the events to the cardinals. Some frowned, deeming Francis's wish peculiar and potentially misleading for the Church. But an elderly cardinal, a close friend of the Pope, smiled. Francis always believed God's love shines in the smallest things, a dog, a child, a village. Perhaps this is his reminder to us. The story of Lucas and Amigo began to ripple beyond the village. A local reporter, Elena, came to interview Sophia. The young mother hesitated but agreed to share the story on the condition that Lucas not be filmed. After listening, Elena wrote her first article, "The Boy Chosen by the Pope." The piece spread rapidly, capturing Spain's attention. But with admiration came skepticism. Some believed the Vatican was using the story to polish its image. Others thought Lucas was just an ordinary boy, and Amigo just a dog. Yet, each time Elena saw Lucas and Amigo walking together, the boy with bright eyes, the dog with a calm stride, she sensed something greater at play. Lucas, oblivious to the debates, continued talking to Amigo. "One day," he said, "Buddy, the old man said we'll find a special place. A place for people to remember." Sophia, overhearing, shivered. She didn't know what special place meant, but she felt certain that Lucas and Amigo's journey was only beginning. The sun was setting over the Andalusian village, casting a warm glow on the cobblestone streets, when Elena's article about Lucas and Amigo hit the presses. By morning, the story had spread beyond the village, racing through Spain like a spark in dry grass. Newspapers in Seville and Madrid carried headlines, "Pope's dog finds new home with Spanish boy." Social media buzzed with photos of the humble house where Lucas lived, though Sophia had fiercely guarded her son from cameras. The world was captivated, but with fascination came questions that Sophia, Lucas, and even Amigo could not yet answer. Sophia sat at her kitchen table, the Pope's letter unfolded before her. Its words, "Let love continue," echoed in her mind, but they offered no clarity. Why had Pope Francis chosen her son? Lucas was no prodigy, no saint, just a quiet boy who loved drawing circles in the dirt and missed his grandmother. Yet, since Amigo's arrival, something had shifted. Lucas's silence, once a heavy wall, was crumbling. He spoke to Amigo in soft, deliberate whispers, as if sharing secrets too precious for anyone else. Sophia watched them from the window, her needle paused mid-stitch. Lucas sat cross-legged in the yard, Amigo's head resting on his knee. "We'll find it, won't we?" Lucas said, his voice barely audible. The place he talked about. Sophia's heart tightened. She hadn't pressed Lucas about the special place he'd mentioned days ago, hoping it was just a child's fancy. But the way he spoke, with a calm certainty, unnerved her. She stepped outside, wiping her hands on her apron. Lucas, what place are you talking about? Who told you about it? Lucas looked up, his dark eyes steady. The man in white, Mama. He comes in my dreams sometimes. He says it's important. Sophia knelt beside him, brushing a lock of hair from his forehead. Sweetheart, dreams are just dreams. You don't have to worry about them. But Lucas shook his head, patting Amigo's fur. It's not worry. It's what we're supposed to do. Before Sophia could respond, a knock at the door startled her. It was Elena, the reporter, clutching a notebook. Sophia, I'm sorry to come unannounced, she said, her voice eager but respectful. The story, it's gone everywhere. People are calling it a miracle. They want to know more about Lucas. Sophia's face tightened. She'd agreed to one interview, but the thought of her son becoming a spectacle made her stomach churn. Elena, he's just a boy. I don't want him overwhelmed. Elena nodded, her eyes softening. I understand. But this story, it's touching people. Families are writing to me, saying it's brought them hope. Can I at least talk to you again? No cameras, I promise. Sophia hesitated, glancing at Lucas, who was now tossing a stick for Amigo to chase. The dog didn't run but walked slowly, as if humoring the boy. There was a quiet dignity in Amigo's movements, a steadiness that Sophia couldn't explain. All right, she said finally. But only about the letter and the dog. Nothing about Lucas's dreams. Elena agreed, and they sat at the kitchen table, the Pope's letter between them. As Sophia recounted the moment Father Paolo arrived, Elena scribbled furiously, her pen pausing only when Sophia described Lucas's first words to Amigo, "You knew you were coming." That's extraordinary, Elena murmured. A boy who barely spoke, now talking to a dog set by the Pope. It's like something from a parable. Sophia shrugged, uncomfortable with the comparison. He's still my Lucas. I just want him to be happy, not chosen for something I don't understand. Elena reached across the table, squeezing Sophia's hand. Maybe that's the point. Maybe it's not about understanding, but trusting. Sophia didn't reply, but Elena's words lingered, stirring a flicker of peace in her heart. As the days passed, the village transformed. Strangers began arriving, pilgrims, journalists, curious locals from nearby towns. They left flowers and handwritten notes at Sophia's gate, thanking Lucas and Amigo for reminding them of faith's quiet power. The village priest, Father Matteo, visited often, his face alight with wonder. Sophia, he said one evening, sitting on her porch, this feels like a gift from God. Your son and that dog, they're waking something in people. Sophia forced a smile, but her mind raced. A gift? Or a burden? She didn't want Lucas to carry the weight of the world's hopes. Lucas, however, seemed unbothered by the growing attention. He and Amigo had fallen into a routine. Each morning, they walked to the edge of the village, where an old stone fountain stood, its basin cracked and dry. Lucas would sit on the rim, Amigo at his side, and talk. Sophia, watching from a distance, caught fragments of his words. He says we'll know when it's time. It's not far. We just have to listen. She didn't know who he was. Pope Francis? God? A figment of her son's imagination? But Amigo's attentive gaze, fixed on Lucas as if understanding every word, made her question her doubts. One morning, as Lucas and Amigo sat by the fountain, a woman approached. She was elderly, her face withered, a rosary dangling from her hands. Are you the boy with the Pope's dog? She asked, her voice trembling. Lucas nodded, stroking Amigo's ears. The woman knelt, tears streaming down her cheeks. I stopped praying when my husband died. But hearing about you. I went to Mass yesterday. Thank you. Lucas tilted his head, confused. I didn't do anything. Amigo did. The woman laughed softly, touching the dog's head. You both did. Sophia, watching from afar, felt a pang of pride mixed with fear. She wanted to protect Lucas, to keep him safe from the world's gaze, but moments like this made her wonder if something larger was at work. That evening, she sat Lucas down. Sweetheart, why do you keep talking about a special place? Can you tell Mama what it is? Lucas fidgeted, his fingers tracing Amigo's collar. It's where people forgot something important. The man in white says we'll find it together. Sophia's throat tightened. Lucas, you don't have to do anything. You're just a boy. But Lucas looked at her, his eyes clear. I'm not scared, Mama. Amigo's with me. Back at the Vatican, Father Paolo faced mounting pressure. The cardinals were divided. Some saw Lucas and Amigo as a divine sign, a testament to Pope Francis's legacy of humility. Others worried the story was spiraling out of control, risking sensationalism. A stern cardinal, Monsignor Rossi, summoned Father Paolo. This boy and his dog are becoming a distraction, he said, his voice sharp. The church must focus on doctrine, not fairy tales. Father Paolo bristled but kept his composure. With respect, Monsignor, the Holy Father believed in this. He saw something in that boy. Rossi waved a hand dismissively. Sentimentality. We need to clarify that this was a personal act, not a miracle. Father Paolo left the meeting troubled. He remembered the Pope's words, a heart that listens. Lucas, with his quiet strength, seemed to embody that. But the church's skepticism wasn't the only challenge. Reports trickled in of critics online, accusing the Vatican of orchestrating the story for publicity. A Spanish tabloid ran a headline, "Is the Pope's dog a PR stunt?" Sophia saw it at the market and hurried home, her hands shaking. She didn't want Lucas exposed to such cynicism. Elena, sensing Sophia's distress, offered to help. Let me write a follow-up, she said. I'll focus on the human side, your love for Lucas, the dog's loyalty. No miracles, just truth. Sophia agreed, and Elena's next article, A Mother's Faith in Her Son and a Dog, struck a chord. Readers across Spain sent letters, sharing how the story had inspired them to reconnect with loved ones or return to church. A teacher in Barcelona wrote, I told my students about Lucas. They started a prayer circle for him. Sophia read the letters, her heart torn between gratitude and unease. One evening, as Sophia tucked Lucas into bed, Amigo curled at his feet, she noticed something new. Lucas was clutching a small notebook, its pages filled with childish scribbles, not circles, but shapes that looked like arches and crosses. What's this, sweetheart? She asked. Lucas yawned, his voice sleepy. It's the place. I see it clearer now. Sophia's pulse quickened. She didn't press him, but after he fell asleep, she flipped through the notebook. The drawings were crude, yet oddly specific, curved walls, a broken step, a cross tilted to one side. It reminded her of something, but she couldn't place it. The next day, Sophia showed the notebook to Father Mateo. The priest steadied the pages, his brow furrowing. This looks like a chapel, he said slowly. There's one like it, abandoned, about an hour from here. No one's used it in years. Sophia's stomach twisted. Lucas has never been there. How could he draw it? Father Mateo placed a hand on her shoulder. Sophia, I don't know. But maybe it's time to trust what's happening. Take him there. See what he finds. Sophia nodded, though doubt gnawed at her. She didn't want to fuel Lucas's fixation, but she couldn't ignore the drawings or Amigo's role. The dog, always calm, seemed more alert lately, his eyes scanning the horizon as if waiting. That night, Sophia prayed for the first time in years, her rosary beads slipping through her fingers. God, if this is your will, show me how to protect my son. The air was thick with anticipation in the Andalusian village as Sophia made up her mind. Lucas's notebook, with its crude sketches of arches and a tilted cross, had sparked something undeniable. Father Mateo's words echoed in her head, take him there. See what he finds. Though fear tugged at her heart, Sophia couldn't ignore the pull of her son's quiet conviction or the way Amigo seemed to guide him. The abandoned chapel, an hour's drive from the village, was their destination. Whatever Lucas was searching for, Sophia prayed it would bring clarity and peace. She packed a small bag with water, sandwiches, and Lucas's notebook, her hands trembling as she zipped it shut. Lucas, oblivious to her unease, sat on the floor, tying his sneakers with careful precision. Amigo lay nearby, his eyes fixed on the boy, as if sensing the importance of the day. "Are we going to the place now, Mama?" Lucas asked, his voice bright but steady. Sophia forced a smile. "Yes, sweetheart. But it's just a trip, okay? We'll see what's there." Lucas nodded, patting Amigo's head. He knows the way. Father Mateo offered to drive, his old car rattling as they left the village behind. Elena, who'd become a trusted friend, insisted on joining, her notebook tucked under her arm. "I won't write anything you don't approve," she promised Sophia. "I just want to be there for Lucas." Sophia nodded, grateful for Elena's presence. The road wound through rolling hills, the landscape stark and silent, but Sophia's mind was loud with questions. What if the chapel was just a ruin? What if Lucas's special place was nothing more than a child's fantasy? And yet, the memory of his drawings, those eerily specific shapes, gnawed at her doubts. Lucas sat in the back seat, Amigo's head resting on his lap. He hummed softly, a tune Sophia didn't recognize, his fingers tracing invisible patterns on the dog's fur. "What's that song, Lucas?" she asked, glancing back. He shrugged, his eyes distant. "It's what the man in white hums sometimes. It makes me feel calm." Sophia exchanged a look with Father Mateo, whose knuckles tightened on the steering wheel. "The man in white," the priest murmured. "Pope Francis, perhaps?" Sophia didn't answer. She wasn't ready to believe her son was connected to something so extraordinary, or to accept what it might mean. The chapel came into view at the end of a dusty path, its white walls crumbling under years of neglect. A faded blue door hung crookedly, and a broken statue, perhaps an angel, its wings chipped, stood sentinel by a gnarled, leafless tree. Sophia's breath caught. It was exactly as Lucas had drawn, the arched entrance, the tilted cross above the door, the cracked stone step. She turned to her son, who was already climbing out of the car, Amigo at his heels. "This is it," Lucas said, his voice firm, no trace of surprise. Elena scribbled in her notebook, her eyes wide. "How did he know?" she whispered to Sophia, who shook her head, unable to speak. Father Mateo approached the chapel, pushing the door open with a creak. Inside, the air was cool and musty, the pews covered in dust. A small altar stood at the far end, its cloth tattered but still bearing a faint embroidered cross. Lucas walked straight to the altar, Amigo following, and sat cross-legged on the floor. The dog lay beside him, his gaze fixed on the altar as if waiting for something, or someone. Sophia's heart raced. "Lucas, what are you doing?" she asked, her voice echoing in the empty space. He didn't answer, his eyes scanning the room. Then, slowly, he reached into his pocket and pulled out his notebook, flipping to a blank page. With a stubby pencil, he began to draw, his small hand moving with purpose. Sophia knelt beside him, peering over his shoulder. The sketch took shape, not the chapel, but a box, square and simple, with a cross on its lid. "What's that, sweetheart?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "It's under there," Lucas said, pointing to the altar. "The man in white says it's important." Father Mateo, overhearing, stepped forward, his face pale. "Under the altar?" He hesitated, then knelt, running his hands along the stone base. To everyone's shock, a loose slab shifted, revealing a small hollow. Inside was a wooden box, its surface worn but intact, a carved cross matching Lucas's drawing. Sophia gasped, clutching Elena's arm. How could he know? Father Mateo carefully lifted the box, placing it on the altar. The wood was heavy, the hinges rusted. He looked to Sophia for permission. She nodded, her throat tight. With a gentle tug, the priest opened the lid, revealing a bundle of yellowed papers tied with a faded ribbon. On top was a single sheet, its ink still legible. Father Mateo read aloud, his voice trembling, "To the one who finds this, let love be your guide." These words, written in faith, are for those who listen with their hearts. Father Antonio, 1948. The group fell silent. Elena's pen hovered over her notebook, forgotten. Sophia stared at the papers, her mind reeling. "Who was Father Antonio?" she asked. Father Mateo shook his head. "I don't know. But it's no coincidence." Lucas, unperturbed, patted Amigo's head. "It's what we came for," he said simply. "The man in white said it's for people who forgot." Back in the village, the discovery sent ripples through the community. Father Mateo brought the box to the parish, where he and Sophia carefully untied the ribbon. The papers were letters, dozens of them, written by Father Antonio, a priest who had served the chapel decades ago. Each letter was addressed to the faithful, urging them to hold fast to love and forgiveness in a time of hardship. Some spoke of rebuilding after war, others of healing broken families. The final letter, dated just before Father Antonio's death, read, "If these words find you, it is because God has chosen a new messenger. Trust them." Sophia's hands shook as she read. "A new messenger," she whispered. "Lucas?" Father Mateo placed a hand on her shoulder. "I believe so. But we must be cautious. This is sacred, Sophia. We need to understand what it means." Elena, who'd been quietly listening, spoke up. "These letters could inspire people today, just as they did then. Let me share this, carefully. No sensationalism, I promise." Sophia hesitated, then nodded. "But protect Lucas. He's not a prophet. He's my son." Elena's next article, "The Lost Letters of a Forgotten Priest," was measured but powerful. It described the chapel discovery without mentioning Lucas's role, focusing on Father Antonio's message of love. The response was overwhelming. Churches across Spain began reading the letters and services, and families shared them online, calling them a gift from the past. But with the spotlight came scrutiny. A television host in Madrid questioned the letters' authenticity, suggesting the Vatican had planted them to bolster the story of Lucas and Amigo. Online forums buzzed with theories, some calling it a miracle, others a hoax. Sophia shielded Lucas from the noise, but she couldn't shield him from his own determination. Each day, he grew more focused, sketching new images in his notebook, hands clasped in prayer, a candle burning low. "It's not done yet, Mama," he told her one evening, Amigo asleep at his feet. "There's more to find." Sophia's heart sank. She wanted to believe in her son, but the weight of his words felt too heavy for a 5-year-old. She turned to Father Mateo for guidance. "What if this is too much for him?" she asked, her voice breaking. The priest sighed. "Sophia, Lucas is walking a path we can't fully see. Our job is to walk with him." At the Vatican, Father Paolo faced a new challenge. The letter's discovery had reignited debate among the cardinals. Monsignor Rossi, ever skeptical, insisted on an investigation. "If these papers are genuine, they belong in the Vatican archives, not a village parish," he declared. But the elderly cardinal who'd supported Lucas spoke up. "Pope Francis chose that boy for a reason. These letters prove it. Let the story unfold." Father Paolo, caught between loyalty to the Pope's wish and the Church's caution, decided to visit the village himself. He needed to see Lucas and Amigo again to understand what was driving this phenomenon. Meanwhile, the village was changing. The chapel, once forgotten, became a pilgrimage site. Villagers claimed its walls, replaced the broken door, and lit candles inside. Lucas and Amigo visited daily, the boy sitting quietly by the altar, Amigo guarding his side. One afternoon, a young girl approached Lucas, her eyes shy. "My papa's sick," she said. "Can you pray for him?" Lucas blinked, unsure. "I'm not special," he said, but he took her hand and closed his eyes, Amigo nudging her gently. The girl smiled, running back to her mother. Word of the encounter spread, and soon more villagers came, asking Lucas to pray. Sophia watched, torn between pride and panic. "He's not a healer," she told Father Mateo. "Why are they doing this?" The priest had no easy answers, but he saw the hope in the villagers' eyes. Lucas, with Amigo by his side, was becoming a symbol, not of miracles, but of something simpler, presence. His quiet prayers, his gentle touch, reminded people they weren't alone. Elena captured this in her next article, writing, "In a world of noise, a boy and his dog are teaching us to listen." The piece went viral, drawing letters from as far as Argentina and the Philippines, where families shared how Lucas's story had inspired them to pray together. The Andalusian village hummed with a quiet reverence, its streets now lined with candles and handwritten prayers left by pilgrims. The forgotten chapel, revived by Lucas and Amigo's discovery of Father Antonio's letters, had become a beacon of hope, drawing souls seeking solace. But for Sophia, the weight of her son's journey grew heavier. Lucas's latest drawing, a circle with radiating lines, like a sun, haunted her. His words, "It's not in the chapel. It's somewhere else," echoed in her mind, stirring a mix of awe and dread. Whatever Lucas and Amigo were chasing, it was pulling them beyond the village, and Sophia wasn't sure she could follow. Each morning, Lucas woke before dawn, his small frame silhouetted against the window as he sat with Amigo by the cracked fountain. He clutched his notebook, whispering about the next step. Amigo, ever attentive, seemed to listen, his ears twitching as if catching a distant call. Sophia watched from the kitchen, her coffee growing cold. She wanted to protect Lucas, to keep him tethered to the ordinary life of a 5-year-old, but his determination was unshakable. "Mama," he said one morning, holding up his son drawing, "it's out there. We have to go." His voice was soft but resolute, and Amigo's steady gaze seemed to echo his resolve. Sophia turned to Father Mateo for counsel. The priest, now a constant presence, sat with her in the parish office, the box of Father Antonio's letters open between them. "Lucas is different since Amigo came," she said, her voice tight. "He's not just my boy anymore. People look at him like he's holy. But he's 5, Father. What if this hurts him?" Father Mateo's eyes softened. "Sophia, Lucas is still your son, but he's also part of something we can't fully grasp. Those letters, the chapel, now this drawing, there's a purpose. Trust him, and trust Amigo. They're guiding each other." Elena, who'd taken to visiting daily, overheard the conversation. "Sophia, let me help," she said, her notebook ever present. "I can research where the son might be. Maybe it's a place tied to Father Antonio." Sophia hesitated, wary of fueling the public's fascination, but Elena's sincerity won her over. "Just be careful," Sophia said. "No more headlines about miracles." Elena nodded, already flipping through her notes. "I'll dig into local history. There might be a clue." Elena's research led her to the village archives, where dusty records revealed a curious detail. Father Antonio, decades ago, had ministered not only at the chapel but also at a small shrine in the hills, dedicated to Our Lady of Hope. The shrine, long abandoned, was said to have a sundial at its center, its stone face carved with radiating lines. Elena's heart raced as she compared the description to Lucas's drawing. Could this be the son? She shared her findings with Sophia and Father Mateo, who agreed to take Lucas to the shrine. "It's a long walk," Father Mateo warned, "but if this is what Lucas is searching for, we need to go." The journey was planned for the following day. Sophia packed a backpack with essentials, her hand steadier than before. She was beginning to accept that Lucas's path, though daunting, was his to walk. Lucas, sensing the trip's importance, was quieter than usual, his eyes fixed on Amigo. The dog, too, seemed alert, pacing the yard with a purpose Sophia hadn't seen before. That night, she found Lucas kneeling by his bed, whispering a prayer. "Help us find it, please," he said, Amigo's head resting on his knee. Sophia's throat tightened. She hadn't taught him that prayer, it was one her grandmother used to say. The next morning, the group set out: Sophia, Lucas, Amigo, Father Mateo, and Elena. The path to the shrine wound through rugged hills, the air sharp with the scent of wild thyme. Lucas walked ahead, Amigo at his side, his small hand clutching the notebook. Sophia watched him, marveling at his focus. "He's so sure," she whispered to Elena. The reporter smiled. "Kids see things we miss. Maybe Amigo helps him see even clearer." Sophia didn't reply, but she noticed Amigo's steady stride, his eyes scanning the path as if he'd walked it before. After 2 hours, the shrine appeared, a crumbling stone structure nestled in a clearing. Its sundial, weathered but intact, stood at the center, its carved lines mirroring Lucas's drawing. Lucas ran to it, Amigo following, and knelt, his fingers tracing the stone. "This is it," he said, his voice trembling with excitement. The man in white said, "It's here." Sophia's heart pounded. "What's here, Lucas?" she asked, kneeling beside him. He pointed to the base of the sundial. "Something for everyone." Father Mateo examined the sundial, his hands probing the stone. A faint click sounded, and a small compartment opened, revealing a metal tin, rusted but sealed. Sophia gasped, her hands covering her mouth. Elena scribbled furiously, her eyes wide. Father Mateo opened the tin, revealing a single object, a silver medallion, engraved with a dove and the words "Amor vincit omnia," love conquers all. A note, and Father Antonio's handwriting, was tucked beside it: "For the one who seeks, this is a reminder, love is the light that never fades. Keep it safe." Lucas reached for the medallion, his small fingers closing around it. Amigo nudged his hand, as if approving. "It's for people to remember," Lucas said, his voice clear. The man in white said they need it. Sophia's eyes filled with tears. She didn't understand how her son knew these things, but the medallion's weight in his hand felt like an answer to a question she hadn't dared ask. The discovery electrified the village. Father Mateo brought the medallion to the parish, where it was placed in a glass case beside Father Antonio's letters. Villagers flocked to see it, their whispers filled with awe. "It's a sign," an elderly woman said, clutching her rosary. "That boy and his dog, they're bringing us back to God." Sophia, overhearing, felt a surge of protectiveness. She didn't want Lucas reduced to a symbol, but she couldn't deny the medallion's impact. People were praying again, families were reconciling, and the village felt alive in a way it hadn't in years. Elena's article about the shrine, carefully worded to avoid sensationalism, spread across Spain. Titled "A Child's Faith Finds a Lost Light," it focused on the medallion's message of love, mentioning Lucas only as a young boy guided by loyalty. The response was overwhelming. Churches in Granada and Cadiz held services inspired by the medallion, and letters poured in from families who'd found comfort in its words. A nurse in Valencia wrote, "I wear a dove pendant now, inspired by Lucas's story. It reminds me to care for my patients with love." But not everyone was convinced. A prominent theologian in Barcelona published an op-ed questioning the discovery's authenticity. "The church must not be swayed by emotional tales," he wrote. "This risks becoming a cult of personality around a child." Online, skeptics echoed his doubts, some accusing Sophia of coaching Lucas for attention. The accusation stung, but Sophia refused to engage. "They don't know my son," she told Elena, her voice firm. "He's not performing. He's just Lucas." Father Paolo, arriving from the Vatican, saw the medallion for himself. Standing in the parish, he felt a pang of awe. "This is what the Holy Father meant," he told Father Mateo. "A heart that listens, Lucas has it." But Monsignor Rossi, informed of the find, demanded the medallion be sent to Rome for analysis. "We cannot let a village dictate doctrine," he said. Father Paolo pushed back, arguing that the medallion belonged with Lucas, but the tension underscored a growing divide in the church. Lucas, unaware of the debates, grew more introspective. He carried the medallion everywhere, tucked in his pocket, and spent hours with Amigo by the fountain, whispering about the last part. Sophia noticed a change in Amigo too. The dog, once calm, now stood watch at night, his eyes fixed on the hills. One evening, Lucas woke from a dream, his face flushed. "Mama, it's not over," he said, clutching the medallion. "There's one more place. The man in white says it's where everything connects." Sophia's heart sank. She'd hoped the medallion was the end, but Lucas's words carried a new urgency. She showed his latest notebook drawing, a bridge with a single star above it, to Father Mateo. The priest frowned. "There's an old bridge near the river, about an hour away. It's been abandoned for years. Could that be it?" Sophia nodded, though fear gripped her. Each step Lucas took pulled him further from the safety of childhood, and she wasn't sure how much farther she could let him go. The village, meanwhile, buzzed with speculation. Some believed Lucas was destined to find more relics, others that he was fulfilling Pope Francis's final wish. A young boy from the village, inspired by Lucas, began leaving drawings of doves at the chapel, calling them messages for Amigo. Sophia watched the growing devotion with unease, but she couldn't deny its purity. Lucas and Amigo were sparking something real, something that reached beyond the village. One afternoon, as Lucas and Amigo sat by the fountain, a woman approached, her face weary but kind. "My daughter's in the hospital," she said softly. "Can you give her this?" She handed Lucas a small candle. Lucas took it, his eyes serious. "I'll pray for her," he said, and Amigo leaned against the woman's leg, as if offering comfort. The encounter, witnessed by Elena, became her next article, "A Boy and His Dog Light a Candle for Hope." It spread globally, drawing letters from families who'd lit candles in solidarity. Sophia, reading the letters, felt a shift. She was still afraid, but she was beginning to see Lucas's journey as a gift, not just for him, but for everyone touched by it. As she tucked him into bed that night, the medallion gleaming in his hand, she whispered, "Whatever you're looking for, I'm with you." Lucas smiled, Amigo curled at his feet. "I know, Mama. Amigo says we're almost there." The Andalusian village pulsed with a quiet hope, its streets now a tapestry of candles, dove drawings, and whispered prayers. Lucas and Amigo, once just a boy and his dog, had become a beacon. Their journey from the Pope's final wish to the discovery of Father Antonio's letters and the silver medallion igniting faith across Spain and beyond. But Lucas's latest drawing, a bridge with a single star above it, hung over Sophia like a storm cloud. His words, "The man in white says it's where everything connects," filled her with both wonder and fear. This was the final step, she sensed, and whatever lay at that bridge would define her son's path, and her own. Sophia sat at the kitchen table, Lucas's notebook open before her. The bridge's sketch was simple yet haunting, its arches curved like a promise, the star glowing in his childish scrawl. Lucas, now inseparable from the medallion, carried it in his pocket, its engraved words, Amor Vincit Omnia, a constant reminder of their mission. Each night, he and Amigo sat by the fountain, whispering about the last place. Sophia watched, her heart torn between pride and protectiveness. She wanted Lucas to stay her little boy, but his quiet resolve, mirrored by Amigo's unwavering presence, told her this journey was bigger than her fears. Father Mateo, ever the steady guide, confirmed the bridge's location. "It's an old stone bridge by the river, about an hour from here," he said, his voice cautious. "It's been abandoned for decades, barely used. But if Lucas drew it, we must go." Sophia nodded, her hands clasped tightly. She'd come to trust Lucas's instincts, but the weight of his words, "Everything connects," felt like a prophecy she wasn't ready to face. Elena, now a fixture in their lives, offered to join. "I'll document it for you, Sophia," she said, her eyes earnest. "Not for the papers, but for Lucas. He deserves to have this remembered." Sophia agreed, grateful for Elena's care. The morning of the journey dawned crisp and clear. Lucas woke early, his sneakers already tied, the medallion gleaming in his hand. Amigo stood by the door, his eyes bright, as if he'd been waiting for this moment. Sophia packed a bag with water, bread, and Lucas's notebook, her movements deliberate. She knelt before her son, brushing his hair back. Whatever happens today, Lucas, I'm with you, she said, her voice steady despite the knot in her chest. Lucas smiled, hugging Amigo. I know, Mama. We're almost done. Father Mateo drove, the car rattling along the winding road to the river. Lucas sat in the back seat, Amigo's head on his lap, humming the same unfamiliar tune from the chapel trip. Sophia, sitting beside Father Mateo, clutched her rosary, praying silently for guidance. Elena, in the back with Lucas, scribbled notes, her pen pausing as she watched the boy and dog. They're like one soul, she whispered to Sophia. Whatever's at that bridge, they'll find it together. Sophia didn't reply, but Elena's words stirred a fragile hope. The bridge came into view, its weathered stone arches spanning a shallow river. Ivy clung to its sides, and a single star-shaped crack marked the central stone, mirroring Lucas's drawing. Sophia's breath caught. This was no coincidence. Lucas leapt from the car, Amigo at his heels, and ran to the bridge's edge. He knelt, the medallion in one hand, his notebook in the other. This is it, he said, his voice ringing with certainty. The man in white said it's here. Sophia hurried after him, her heart pounding. What's here, Lucas? Tell Mama. Lucas pointed to the base of the central arch, where the stone was worn smooth. It's inside, he said. For everyone. Father Mateo, joining them, ran his hands along the stone, his fingers catching on a faint seam. With a gentle push, a small panel shifted, revealing a hollow. Inside was a leather pouch, its surface cracked but intact. Sophia gasped, her hands trembling. Elena, standing nearby, dropped her notebook, her eyes wide. Father Mateo carefully opened the pouch, revealing a single item, a handwritten journal, its pages brittle but legible. A note on the first page, and Father Antonio's familiar script, read, "To the one who crosses this bridge, carry love forward. These are my final words, for a world that needs them. Father Antonio, 1949. The group stood in stunned silence. Sophia's eyes filled with tears as Father Mateo flipped through the journal. It was filled with reflections on faith, hope, and the power of small acts of kindness. One passage stood out, "A child will come, led by love, to remind us that God speaks in whispers. Listen to them." Lucas, peering over the priest's shoulder, touched the page. "That's what he meant," he said softly. The man in white said this is where it all connects. Amigo nudged Lucas's hand, his eyes calm but knowing. Sophia knelt beside her son, her voice breaking. "Lucas, how did you know?" He shrugged, his small face serene. "Amigo showed me." And the man in white helped. Sophia pulled him into her arms, the journals weighed a tangible link to something eternal. Elena, wiping tears from her cheeks, whispered, "This is more than a story. It's a legacy." Back in the village, the journal became a sacred relic, placed beside the medallion and Father Antonio's letters in the parish. Father Mateo read passages during Mass, his voice carrying the words to a packed congregation. Villagers wept, their hands clasped, as they heard Father Antonio's call to love in a broken world. The journal's discovery spread quickly. Elena's final article, "A Boy's Journey Completes a Priest's Dream, Capturing Its Quiet Power." She wrote, "Lucas and Amigo didn't find a miracle. They found a truth, love endures, carried by the smallest among us." The response was global. Churches in Mexico, Italy, and the United States incorporated Father Antonio's words into sermons. Families wrote to Sophia, sharing how the journal had inspired them to forgive old wounds or reach out to estranged relatives. A school in Seville named a library corner after Lucas, though Sophia insisted it be called Amigo's Corner. The village, once a sleepy dot on the map, became a pilgrimage site, its chapel and bridge drawing thousands. Yet, through it all, Lucas remained unchanged. He played with other children, drew in his notebook, and walked with Amigo, the medallion always in his pocket. The Vatican, too, felt the impact. Father Paolo, back in Rome, presented the journal to the cardinals. Monsignor Rossi, though still skeptical, couldn't deny its authenticity. The elderly cardinal who championed Lucas smiled. Pope Francis knew, he said. He chose a boy and a dog to remind us what matters. The Vatican issued a rare statement, acknowledging the discoveries as a testament to the Holy Father's vision of love. Father Paolo, reading it, felt a weight lift. The Pope's wish had come full circle. But not all were convinced. A few media outlets persisted with doubts, calling the journal a convenient find. A blogger in Madrid wrote, "A sweet story, but too perfect to be true." Sophia, seeing the post, brushed it off. "They don't understand," she told Elena. "Lucas isn't trying to prove anything. He's just himself." Elena nodded, her final article reflecting Sophia's resolve. In a world craving proof, Lucas and Amigo offer something better, faith. As months passed, Lucas's journey settled into a quiet rhythm. He and Amigo visited the bridge weekly, sitting by the river, the medallion glinting in the sun. Villagers began calling it the Bridge of Forever, a place where love connected past and present. One day, a young girl approached Lucas, holding a candle. "My sister's better now," she said, referencing the prayer he'd offered months ago. "Thank you." Lucas blushed, patting Amigo. "It wasn't me. It was him." The girl laughed, hugging the dog, and Sophia, watching, felt a surge of gratitude. Lucas was still her boy, but he'd given the world something she couldn't measure. Amigo, now older, moved slower, his fur streaked with gray. Sophia noticed his eyes, once sharp, growing softer, as if he knew his work was nearly done. One evening, as Lucas slept, Amigo lay beside him, his breathing shallow. Sophia sat by them, her hand on the dog's head, whispering, "You did good, friend." The next morning, Amigo was gone, his body still beside Lucas. The boy woke, tears streaming down his face, but his voice was steady. "He's with the man in white now, Mama," he finished. The village mourned Amigo, gathering at the bridge to lay flowers and candles. Lucas buried him under the star-cracked stone, the medallion placed in a small box beside him. "You showed me everything," he whispered, his voice breaking. Sophia held him, her own tears falling, but she saw strength in her son's eyes, a strength born of love. Years later, Lucas grew into a quiet teenager, his notebook filled with new drawings, his heart still tied to Amigo and the man in white. The village never forgot, its chapel and bridge enduring as symbols of hope. Sophia, now a pillar of the community, shared their story with pilgrims, always ending with Father Antonio's words, "Love is the light that never fades." The journal, letters, and medallion remained in the parish, touched by thousands, a reminder that God speaks through the smallest hearts. Lucas's journey, sparked by a pope's wish, had changed the world, not with grand miracles, but with the soft steps of a boy and his dog. It was a story of listening, of trusting, of carrying love forward. And in every candle lit, every prayer whispered, their legacy lived on. If this story touched your soul, please like, subscribe to With Jesus Every Day, and hit the bell to follow more tales of faith and love. Share how Lucas and Amigo moved you in the comments below, and never forget to pee.